First story. Am I that bad for not going on my son's birthday trip? I, M42, have been married to Jane, F43, for 14 years. We have two kids, Emily, F13, and John, M5. We were together for 3 years prior, and lived together for 2.5 of those years. We also knew each other as teenagers from summer camp, but lost touch and reconnected in our 20s through social media. I'll be the first to admit we aren't great for each other. We have very different personalities and temperaments. I am shy and introverted, enjoy staying home and relaxing, puttering around the house, reading, video games, etc. She likes going out, bars, clubs, hanging out with friends. Her parents really took to me, and I think that was part of why we got together. She is very close with them. I was a nice boy she could settle down with. Things went more or less okay for the first few years. I guess she got bored with domestic life, because eventually she started going out more. I was in Italy okay with this, as I got some alone time and she got to have her fun with her friends. It may be worth noting here that throughout our marriage, we never really made friends with our peers, like other couples around our age with kids. It was always her going out with her friends. What few friendships I had maintained slowly faded away. I turned to alcohol and would just drink alone in the basement at night, getting lost in a video game of binging a show. I was a high-functioning alcoholic, never affected work or got into legal trouble, but it wasn't good. When our daughter was 6, my doctor said I had mild pancreatitis and if I didn't stop drinking I would die. After a few false starts, I made my way to AA and haven't had a drink in 6.5 years. When I got sober, the state of my marriage was poor. Jane was spending most nights at her best friend's house. Introduce Edwin, M40s. I pleaded with Emily to come back and try to work on it. She said she needed to think about it, and we continued living like that. She would go to work, come home in the evening, spend a little time with us playing family, and then leave for Edwin's. I remember clearly Halloween that year. We took our daughter trick-or-treating with the cousins. It had become something of a family tradition by that point. I remember walking down the street and talking with Emily, telling her that weeks were turning into months and was she any closer to reaching a decision? She told me you're winning. Then nothing changed for nearly a year. During this time, she would spend most nights away, but would occasionally stay at home. When she did, she would insist on me cuddling with her, sleep in the same bed, and we would have sex from time to time. The whole time she continued to claim that Edwin was just her friend. Though I did some snooping on her tablet one time, and found a message to an ex of hers, in which she said the only two people she was ever in love with were him, Vex, and Edwin, and would he ever be interested in getting back together if she got divorced? Her getting pregnant is what changed things. Well, that and the combination of that and Edwin getting a new GF, who didn't take kindly to him having a woman spend nights at his place. It was a difficult pregnancy, but we rallied and things hummed along for a while. In the last year, she had been going out more and more, and we were not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things, particularly with how to parent John. One night we sat down and had a surprisingly calm and rational discussion, and both agreed that we should probably get divorced, but had no idea how to go about it financially. Over the next few months, she would go back and forth between wanting to split up or staying together. When she was home, she would again insist that I sleep with her and act like a loving husband. Only now, she wouldn't take no for an answer, berating and insulting me if I didn't give in. But once I did, I would immediately get the cold shoulder, and she would increase the frequency of her going out. This cycle would repeat over and over, and I started getting depressed. My therapist was concerned and had me see my doctor, who put me on a mild antidepressant, which has been helping. When she has been going out, she has usually said she's going to her friend Tracy's house. I always took her at her word, because despite everything we had been through, I always believed her to be honest to a fault. Lately something has been feeling off though. like she's always dressing up real cute before she goes there. And sometimes she would go sit in her car in the driveway to make phone calls. Anyway, I was looking through our cell phone plan online and saw that there would be a text to a particular number right after she would leave the house for the night. Threw the number into Google and it came back as Edwin's. I called and asked where she was. She got real nervous, quickly said I have to go and hung up. She came home at 6 this morning. I told her what I discovered, and she still tried to double down, insisting that I was wrong for questioning where she was. She says that yes, she has reconnected with Edwin, but that they aren't together. I feel sick. I don't know why this should hurt so much. Maybe it's the lying. This week is our son's 5th birthday. She booked a night at Great Wolf Lodge for us and the kids Thursday, Friday. I told her there is no way I'm going to that now. She says I'm an asshole and I'm ruining John's birthday. Update. I took my ring off yesterday. She hasn't worn hers in years. 6 years ago we almost split up. We were basically staying together for our daughter. She would come home after work and to spend time with our daughter, then left for her best friend's house after she went to bed. I get drunk alone in the basement. Had a come to Jesus moment when my doctor said I had mild pancreatitis from the drinking. I went to AA and got sober. I looked at our marriage in the cold light of day. Anyone could see this was unsustainable. I wasn't going to stay married to a woman who essentially lived with another man. She said she didn't know what she wanted and needed time. This dragged on for nearly a year. The house was in her name because of my debts. I felt trapped. My finances were a bit better and I secured financing to be able to buy the house from her. I brought all of this to her and said I wanted to divorce. This shook her, and she said we could try to work it out, and we went to counseling. It was not very productive. We went a few times, and she felt the therapist was always taking my side, so we stopped. She got pregnant. It was a difficult pregnancy, and through it we rallied and things went okay for a while. She cut contact with her best friend. I knew she loved him, but Shen was making a choice to work things out with me, so as long as they were no contact I could accept it. Financially things were improving as well. During COVID we were both able to continue working, and my job was able to afford me a bunch of overtime, which was previously unavailable. I essentially took 2 days off per month that first year. I was paying down debt and building some reserves. But with 2 kids our 888 square FT house was getting cramped. We bought a bigger house, now in both of our names. We soldiered on, but we were always very different. She was always on the go, could never settle down. Home for her was a place to sleep at, not before heading out to the next thing. I'm the opposite. I wanted home to be the center of our family and I worked hard to maintain it. I found myself doing 75% of the housework. We have both always worked, usually 2 jobs apiece, and finances have been 50-50. We didn't prioritize the same things though. I wanted to plan for the future, budget, invest in our home. She wanted vacations and fun. Sex had always been an issue for us as well. She has a higher libido than me. It's not that I don't like sex or don't want it as much, but for me I need to have the emotional connection in order to be physically intimate. She needs sex to feel close. She started going out more. She was restless and unsettled and I tried to give her the space she needed. I can't really say what prompted it, but one day we sat down and had an unusually reasonable discussion where we both agreed we should get divorced, but didn't know how we could afford it or what it would look like. It was also overwhelming. She kept going back and forth over the next few months, however. She had another friend, a woman, in her 20s this time. A former student actually. She is a teacher. We are both in our 40s. She would often go out with this woman, staying out all night, 2-4 nights a week. If she stayed home, sometimes she would drink too much and get belligerent, often demanding sex. Luckily she would usually pass out minutes after she got in bed. But she was confused too, and said she still had feelings and also that she had needs, and that if we were going to be living in the same house, she should get benefits. She would often berate and insult me if I refused, so I sometimes gave in. As soon as I would though, she would be a ghost again. This cycle continued and I started to get depressed. I had been seeing a therapist and he had me start on an antidepressant. It's been helping. I found out this week that she has been lying, and the person she has been seeing is not the former student, but the best friend from 6 years ago. They reconnected who knows how long ago. I wasn't expecting it to hurt this much. I thought I was already checked out of this relationship. She is insisting that they are not together. I can't stomach being around her. She is away with the kids for the night. She booked the trip for our son's 5th birthday this week. But after finding out she was lying to me to be with him, there was no way I was going to go. She thinks we can just go on living in the same house, doing our own thing and co-parenting. I contacted an attorney, had a consult, and secured a loan to cover the retainer. She thinks I'm being ridiculous and it's weird, but some part of me wants to listen to her. Is that what gaslighting is? I know the term gets thrown around all the time, so I hesitate to use it, but the situation seems insane to me. Thanks if you read this far, I just needed to get this out. Second story. Encouragement for WS. Any advice on how to provide encouragement when you are the BP, but WS love language is verbal affirmation and encouragement? I sucked at this previous to D-Day, and now it is even harder to want to do given the betrayal. Her low self-esteem is part of the conditions and vulnerabilities for her choices, but she also struggles with ADHD and shame. So in order for her to keep working on repair, she needs the encouragement. WS is doing a lot of hard work, but there are also still road bumps, setbacks and ups and downs. We are 3 months post-second D-Day. It was 4 years ago during COVID 4-month EA with no PA and NC in place. Update. Limerence justification. Do any other BP and WP have the thoughts that limerence sometimes just feels like another justification? I get the concept of it, and I guess not being the one in limerence, hard to relate to on a deep level. Sometimes it just feels like something made up to make both the BP and WP feel better and soften the blow of I was not in love, but in limerence. Update. Flirting versus sexting question. DD was January 1st, 2024. My WS is doing all the right things and trying to be accountable. The affair was an EA with no PA, where she is struggling is coming to terms with calling it a sexual affair. Sex to her is physical, I think mostly due to purity culture. No pictures were sent, but enough innuendo, double entendre for her to admit there was a sexual undertone or flirting but does not consider it a sexual affair. But she does accept it was infidelity and an EA affair. My question is, there a continuum of flirting to sexting? Or as I believe, all of it is sexual, even if no images or direct descriptions of sex and text were sent. Isn't it all about intent of showing availability and interest? Update. Definition of sexual. Any thoughts on what the definition of sexual is? We seem to swirling around this to determine the depth of betrayal. At first she struggled because my WS was in denial and fear avoidance of my reaction if she agreed it was sexual. Now on recovery work, it is becoming clearer her definition was strongly influenced by purity culture. If you search up the term, it is so broad, it's thrown about in all the books and resources. If someone asked you what your first sexual experience was, how would you answer? Is it possible to have individual definitions but also hold that there is a universal truth? Update. Shower thoughts. Some of my best insights about the affair come in the shower. Today was a thought that helped with a constant comparing to AP. It wasn't that AP was better at pushing my WS buttons or validating her than me. It's because both of them have shitty boundaries. He pushed his way into creating intimacy and she did not stop it and quickly reciprocated. I now see that anyone can create intimacy and have an EA if you pursue or allow it. I think if I pushed into other women's boundaries all the time, a few of them will eventually bite because of their own boundary issues. So for me, it means that the EA was not special or unique. He was not special or unique. But then I question, is any relationship special or unique? If that is the case, if that's is all it takes. Update: I never really had a chance, did I? I never really had a chance, did I? I never really had a choice, did I? You changed the terms. You changed the teams. That cake, my coquette, that one you wanted so bad. How does it taste, my pet? Sweeter than the one you already had. Where there was once one, there is now two, and only because of you. There was once only love, never hate, and now I fear it is too late. Does hate make room for despair and invites his brother dismay, which leaves behind repair? Update: need some direct experience advice on disclosure details. For background, EA was 4 years ago, but we rug swept, and last D-Day was January 1st, 2024. Been married for 23 years. WS has been making great progress in her fuller understanding of the whys, emerging from a fair fog, being accountable, truthful and remorseful versus shame, etc. Tomorrow is when she will be sharing full disclosure. She has written down all of her compromise, big and small, and all her justifications that went with them. I know the big stuff, the texts that were deleted, the one intimate hug. I had downloaded her phone messages prior to D-Day and had give her the book, Not Just Friends, in 2020 during height of EA, because I knew it felt off. I am struggling with how much details do I want to know. For context, there was no BA other than one intimate hug. I think COVID pandemic helped to reduce opportunity for proximity. I believe there was not any actual sexting, meaning nudes or implied nudes, even though AP tried to ask for them. Mostly because of how my WS was conditioned by purity culture to view sexual as physical. So she felt safe to play in the non-PA or nude images space. So I don't have to be concerned about avoiding questions around graphic sex details, other than her sexual fantasies about AP, which I already know that I won't ask about. I do know there was plenty of double entendre, use of GIFs and memes to use as a safe cover what was being shared. That is where I don't know if I want that detail of what was specifically said back and forth, or her telling me the gist of the compromise. Do I want those words and GIFs burned into my brain? I know it seems silly compared to what others have had to go through, but it is all about intent. I waffle because I have seen a GIF that was sent from her to him about Han and Leia. I know, silly, but that broke me because that was our thing since college, that was meant for just her and me, and she carelessly shared with him. Now I can never watch Star Wars again, which really pisses me off, because it is triggering. So what else is going to be ruined if I see it all? The other hand, here is why I want to see everything. 1. My imagination canon has made it worse than it actually was. 2. Hard to move into forgiveness if I don't know what I am forgiving. 3. Need WS to be accountable with me. I need to know she knows that I know. 4. More secrets, even if available for me to access when I want. Feels like the affair is still ongoing. 5. Knowing that there are more details hidden, feels like another D-Day, more TT. 6. With previous instances of feeling unsafe in a relationship early on, I have obsessed over not knowing the details when being told nothing happened. 7. Grounds me in reality when my reality, or what I thought was true, was manipulated and distorted. 8. I don't want to linger in the past. I want to face it, process it, learn from it, but not need to go back to rehash it. Any advice from those that have gone through the disclosure process? Third story. What should we do? My wife, 28F, and I, 28M, have been married for 8 years, have 2 wonderful children together, and for the most part have been in a loving marriage. We have been together since we were in high school, quickly fell in love, and really haven't left each other's side, despite 2 separations. To this day I still am in awe of her beauty and love her unconditionally. Not once have I genuinely felt like there was no love towards her. The first separation was for about 2 months. We essentially became roommates, and she ultimately decided that she needed to leave the state and clear her mind. While I wasn't aware of her true intentions at first, one way or another I found out she had left the state to be with a man she had met online. I will not sit here and claim to be the most amazing husband. And a lot of this separation was my fault, as I have battled a porn addiction for quite a while. I have lied to her about said porn addiction multiple times, and she rightfully so did what she thought was best. During this separation I started to chat with a girl I used to go to school with. We never hung out with each other, just talked about this separation and kinda got to know each other again. We reconciled very quickly, and, very stupidly, decided to forego marriage counseling, and before we know it we were pregnant with child number 2. I never truly forgave her for this separation until about a year or so ago. During her pregnancy I did some very stupid things. I have never cheated on her physically, but I did look at other women's Instagram accounts and have got off to these women during her pregnancy. To this day, I feel like such a fucking terrible person and live with this guilt day in and day out. Fast forward to about a year ago, 2 years after our first separation. A very traumatic event happened that her and I both are still recovering from. After said event, I decided to go out to the bar and got plastered beyond belief. I came home, went through her phone, saw some things I didn't like and went ballistic on her. I said some of the most awful things you can say to someone you love. After this fight, we decided that it would be best for us to take time apart from each other and focus on ourselves. We have now been separated for almost 9 months. During this separation, roughly a month into it, after mutually deciding that our kids will live with their grandparents in another state that night they left, I begged and begged for her and I to spend the night with each other, to at least be there for each other on one of the worst nights mentally we have ever had. She had a different idea and decided to stay at another man's house. The amount of anger and resentment I felt was unbelievable, and that night I decided I would tell her how I feel, block her, and move in the next couple days. The day before I left, I decided out of spite to get a coworker's number, and almost immediately, I started to chat her up in a sexually manner. During this separation, she has dated said person, moved him into my house, slept with multiple people, and just recently became more serious about reconciling our marriage. I have not been perfect, as I was seeing someone, though we never had sex. I have talked to multiple women, and have talked sexually to 3 of them, and just recently, after seeing how serious my wife is about reconciliation, cut ties with them. For almost a week now she has been grilling me about these girls, and I have lied to her about them. Specifically about how I felt about them. We are now at the point of no return, it seems. She is heartbroken, feels dumb for trying to make this work again, and cannot seem to understand that I wholeheartedly want her and only her. I did these things out of spite and to fill a void that was left. IDK, what the fuck to do? Reddit. TLDR, wife and I separated for a second time. Both made very shitty choices, lied about said choices, now it seems like there's no return. 4th story. Do I need to get a divorce because I was caught with another man? Hello everyone. I hope you're doing fine. I wanted to write my own story to get external opinions on my situation. Also, English is not my first language since I'm from Spain, so excuse me for the use of AI to correct my text. I, 23F, and my husband, 31M, met around the spring of 2021 and got married the following summer. We got married after 1 year of being together due to our religious families, his more so than mine, and because we wanted to move abroad together. I had just received my bachelor's degree, and my husband was already living abroad, holding a prestigious position at a large company. Our families were happy, and it made the paperwork easier for me to join him in this other country. Before getting married, everything seemed perfect. He showed me a lot of respect, love, and dedication. often surprising me with flights to my town to resolve fights or just to see me. We went on many trips together and experienced a luxurious lifestyle. However, I felt our relationship was a bit rushed, as he frequently asked me to introduce him to my family so he could ask for permission to marry me. I told him I didn't want to lose him but wasn't sure about making such a huge commitment since I was very young and had recently gotten out of a 6-year, toxic relationship. He told me it was either marriage or nothing. Being naive or perhaps foolish, you decide. I thought that a man knowing what he wants must be very good, especially in this day and age, so I went along with it. He had rules, though: no male friends, no male entourage, no males at all except him, my dad, and my brother. I complied and cut off all my male friends, including my best friend, with whom I had been very close since we met in middle school at around 12 years old. Things went downhill quickly when his family insisted on having the wedding in their town, 10 hours by car from my hometown. This was unfair because I come from a modest background, and many of my family and friends couldn't afford the trip. My husband's wealthy family didn't have this issue, and my sister-in-law was also getting married in their hometown the following year. My mother-in-law cried to my husband, so I reluctantly agreed. My in-laws invited people we didn't know, even after we said the reception was at full capacity. I had a bad feeling and was so stressed I could only manage iced coffee for days. My mother told me I could back out if I wanted, but I didn't want to disappoint my husband and his family. At the wedding, my in-laws didn't compliment me and mostly kept to themselves, hardly interacting with my guests who traveled far. I couldn't eat because I was so upset. My father-in-law even seated his uninvited friends at the table reserved for my father and other relatives, who had to find random places to eat. When I complained, my husband tried to fix it, but his mother told me to stop crying and fetch my father. The next day, we flew to the country where my husband lived. We had a fight about the previous night, and when I called his family out, he slapped me. Devastated, I ran out of the house. He found me, apologized, and convinced me to stay, promising it wouldn't happen again. But he continued to verbally and physically abuse me, calling me names, horseslut, and beating me. He tore my bottom lip twice and left bruises and marks on my face. Despite trying to defend myself, his martial arts skills and size made it impossible. His violence always followed our fights, often triggered by my smart mouth. 2 years later, after enduring severe assaults, I had to call the police but I did not press charges. When the police arrived, he told me, "You really are allowing cops to enter our house and treat me like that?" I felt guilty because he provided for me, didn't expect me to pay for anything, bought me things, let me choose our vacations, and did many things to please me. When it was good, it was really good, and when it was bad, it was really bad. Despite his generosity, I couldn't accept his violence anymore or even picture myself staying and having a family with a man who treats me this way. On top of this, his family treated me as badly as he did. They would come over uninvited. Mind you, we live in a different country, expecting me to receive them like royalty and cook them a feast. The one time I couldn't manage because I had spent 8 hours at the hospital for an OB/GYN emergency and hadn't eaten all day. They waited until they got home to call my husband and criticize me for hours, which led my husband to call me names and threaten me with divorce. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. I pretended everything was perfect when I visited my hometown or spoke with friends and family. I endured and escaped domestic violence in a foreign country, often staying in hotels for peace, without confiding in anyone because I didn't want to worry them. Once, during one of my hotel stays, I was so down and worn out that I wanted to talk to someone I knew but who wasn't currently in my life. I contacted a guy mate, but the number I had saved was actually my old male best friend's. When he picked up, he said my name before I even spoke, and I hung up. But then, I realized he was the one who truly understood me, so I called him back. He was shocked because we hadn't spoken in years and he had dreams of me recently. We talked all night. He told me that he heard about my wedding and he asked me to consider meeting him when I was back in our hometown. In the morning, I felt guilty and decided not to call him again. However, the violence never stopped. The next time I visited my hometown, I decided to meet my old best friend. Our first meeting was crazy. We had changed so much yet stayed the same. We talked about everything that happened since we lost contact. Since then, we've been talking and meeting secretly whenever I'm in my hometown. Even though he told me he was always in love with me, we didn't act on it. After he confessed his feelings, I started thinking about our 10-year history and how everything made sense between us. We understood each other without speaking. My family loves him and still asks about him, and his family does the same with me. We shared so much, graduations, losses, confidences, and always respected each other. When I told him about the abuse and begged him to don't involve himself, he advised me to go back home and be honest with my family. After the police incident, I decided to tell my loved ones what was happening and leave my husband for good. I started packing while my husband was on a trip. He called my mother to explain his side, a small part of the abuse, and begged her to convince me to stay. My mother was devastated, crying for days because I had hidden this for 2 years. She told me to come home. My husband begged me to stay, claiming he loved no one but me and that I was the only one who could be the mother of his children. After exposing the situation to my family, I stayed in my house to clear my head, organize my stuff, and pack. When my husband returned from his trip with gifts, he promised to change now that my mom knew some things. I pretended to believe him to make my departure easier. He grew suspicious of my distance and went through my phone at night, finding the conversation with my best friend. He woke me up, furious, and called me every name in the book, declaring it was over. Despite my assurances that we were not having an affair, he was too mad to listen. I had to swear nothing happened for him to believe me. He demanded I earn back his trust, though I felt I was driven to someone else because of his actions. He even wanted to go and beat up my best friend, which I avoided. For security reasons, I stopped contacting my best friend after a year of talking. My husband asked me to change my number and give him time to forgive and trust me again. I don't know what to do since he keeps bringing up me talking to my best friend and calling me a cheater. Also, getting married at 21 meant I didn't pursue a master's degree and stopped my studies after earning my bachelor's degree. Meanwhile, my husband completed his education and earns a salary that only 4% of the population in our country achieve. In contrast, I was mostly a stay-at-home wife, except for the time I worked as a marketing consultant for a few months to help my family during a difficult time and managed to save about $3,000 after assisting them. However, I haven't even obtained a driving license yet since I moved to a new country. I feel that if I go through with this divorce, I will have to start my life over and fend for myself, which I don't mind, but I do feel a bit late to be starting anew. Additionally, my husband has said that if I leave, I must return all the items he bought me, such as bags, jewelry, and especially my custom-made diamond wedding ring. Am I entitled to keep these, or do I need to return them? I should add that I was responsible for cooking from scratch every day, cleaning the house, doing the laundry and ironing, managing his appearance, choosing his outfits, handling our agenda, and keeping tabs on everything related to the household. My best friend assured me that I will never be alone since I have a very good support system back home, and because he will be here for anything I need. He said that knowing me, I'm quite capable of starting again in a heartbeat, but I just lack confidence and feel quite worn out. Should I leave for good? Even if he didn't know about me talking to my best friend, I think I need to leave.